Hi, are you like me and love to play golf but are sick of playing golf with back pain, especially in that lower S joint area? I'm going to show you three things you can do today to help alleviate some of that stress on that lower back and get you playing golf pain free. Let's transform your game. Hi, I'm Bill from Phoenix Golf, and today we're going to talk about some things we can do to relieve stress in our lower back during either practicing golf or playing golf. If this is your first time on the channel, I appreciate if you hit the like button or subscribe button so you know when I release new videos. I do try to do it every week. And it'll help me continue to grow the channel and do this, which I love to share my golf knowledge. So I'd really appreciate it. So today, let's talk about some things you can do to help alleviate stress in your back. Now, a few years ago, probably 7 or 8 years ago, I started to get really serious about my game. And I didn't have much of a hip turn. So I went and got a lesson. And the guy was like, this is how you turn your hips. This is how you should be practicing. So me being the golf junkie I was like, well, I'm going to practice this. And I just did it over and over and over again. And then at one point, I threw my back out, which basically means your back thought you were injured and tightened everything up. And I found out once you do that, you tend to do it over and over again. And so I tend to do it once a year, maybe twice a year. And it always throws a wrench in my game. Always right about the time I'm starting to play good, it happens. So, of course, I actually do a strength routine and a stretching routine at least 5 or 6 days a week just to keep my hips loose, just to keep my lower back loose, and I still have trouble. So I started to develop recently some ways that could alleviate some stress on my lower back, what was causing the lower back issues, where I could do things differently. So this winter I can practice them and hopefully next year not battle as many back issues. And that's what I would always say first is please, 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 get a lesson so you know what's wrong with your game so you're not working on stuff you don't need to. But two, create a strength and conditioning routine, especially, hip drills, hip openers, things like that nature, because when you sit at a desk all day and then you go out to the range and you're swinging 100 miles an hour, literally, and you're putting, they say, 2 times the force of your body weight with every swing. So for me, I weigh like 200 pounds. That's 400 pounds with every swing. So you need to make sure your body can withstand that. So for me, it came down to I had to learn what moves in the golf swing, what's not supposed to move in the golf swing, and where I can alleviate that. And what I learned is, your hips are for moving here. They're the lower base of your back. That's your S joint. And everything that's not really made for twisting and moving. So for me, it's that side bend, which they always want. You watch the pros; they have amazing side bend. But for me, just doing this, even though I stretched out today, I can still feel tightness here. It's just kind of how it is for me, and I'm sure it is for a lot of other people too. So I had to kind of figure out ways to alleviate that. So make sure you watch some videos, and I can even put something in the description here for like some exercises I like to do and stuff that could help you, because back injuries, like, I want to be able to play until I can't play anymore. And so I really want to make sure that I'm taking care of my back and things of that nature. So the first thing we want to make sure is we're getting a proper turn and we're not swaying, because if you're swaying your hips like this in the back swing and forward swing, it really adds a lot of stress to the lower back. So a couple different things you can do. I always just take a club and hold it out next to me, and then I take my lead hand and I basically reach to try to get the club. And you can see this gap, this space that I'm creating right there. That is a good turn. That means your hips are turning the way they're supposed to turn, moving your torso and everything, versus swing and adding a lot of stress to these joints and hip areas and S joints and all those muscles there. So make sure you're getting a proper turn. That's the first thing I can really stress. And even doing this 10 to 15 times a day or more as part of your exercise routine, just to feel that good hip turn, feel your knee go back, feel you create some space, and you can kind of see it from this way. Adding a good hip turn versus you don't see my knee at all. You don't see my lead knee. So you know that I'm not turning anything. So step one is to make sure you have a good hip turn. Step two is I start every drill, every practice section, everything I do now, I start with the flamingo drill. The flamingo drill is just what it sounds. You stand on your lead foot, your trail leg you bring behind you and either tap down with like one foot or just kind of keep it just on your toes. And I usually take mine and just space it out just a little bit away from me. And I practice this every session, just 50% swings, just to get that area loosened up without adding extra side bend or any stress to this S joint area. Because if you do, that's, you come out here and you just start swinging away, and you got side bend and all this pressure is being put there. It's going to hurt and back's going to start tightening up. So that kind of leads me, after doing that drill, I was like, what can I do while I'm playing the game to make sure I'm playing as pain-free as possible? So what I started to do was I took a sponge or some type of cardboard, something, and I put it on the outside of my foot here. Let me make sure you can see that on the outside of my foot. And I practice basically banking my trail foot so it's almost just on the side here. It's like I have no weight on my foot at all. It's all like being banked. And 90% of my weight, I'm going to show you this way, is on this lead side. So I've got this trail foot really banked here. You can see, you can even put a club right underneath it. So what I then did was practice some swings going through where this leg turns. And for me, as an early extension problem person where I battle that, it's actually a good drill for that. So making sure that I take my stance like normal and then just put some weight on this lead side and bank this foot. I've already alleviated some of the stress off that area. So the third thing I did was I want to make sure it's easier for my hips and body to get my weight forward, because if I can't do that, again, it's adding a bunch of stress right here. So what I did was, you normally want to have your front foot flared out, like they say, like 20%. I'm actually flaring mine out, I want to say like 40 to 50%, making sure that all my weight is on this lead leg. And now I've banked my trail foot. The biggest thing you want to make sure, though, is you're not opening up your shoulders, because then you'll start slicing everything. So you want to make sure, like when you take your stance, you put the club in front of you and drop it, making sure these shoulders are level and not face this way, because it's easy to do when you get in the stance. The other thing I did too is narrow my stance. If you narrow your stance, it's easier for these hips to turn. And the wider my stance is, the harder it is to turn those hips. So you don't need, a driver is, one step, two steps. That's a driver. So that's the widest you should ever be. Obviously, people come in different sizes. So if you're really, really tall, you're going to need a wider base. But for most of us, just shoulder width is good enough here. And it'll allow you to turn those hips easier and take stress off the lower back. So step one, make sure we're getting a good hip turn and you're not swaying. Step two, bank a trail foot. I started like this, where it's just slightly touching the ground here. So I'm basically just kind of like dragging that leg through. And that was when I had consistent pain, but I knew it would get better. But if I had to play, like if it was golf league or something I really wanted to play in, you can take that leg and bank it. And then step three is to flare this foot out. Experiment with it. You may not need as much flare as I did, but when I'm doing like 40%, I really feel like I'm really getting through the ball now. And I have less tendency to not only early extend and stand up, but I have less tendency to flip the club too. So I'm really getting through this way by opening up that lead leg. So those are three things you can do to alleviate stress in your lower back while you're playing golf, especially practicing. But I will stress, like, if it's like actively hurting, actively burning, like stuff like that, don't play, of course. I'm just like, things you can do to help alleviate stress, because throughout the year, if you're like me, you're playing once or twice a week, maybe even more if you're getting out. And every time you're swinging, you're adding more and more pressure to that hip area. So those are three things you can do to kind of alleviate some of that back pain while you're playing, and just don't give it, because if you are putting a lot of stress down here and then you're side bending like this over and over again without stretching, this S joint area will then start hurting here, and it will then start spasming up into the back. So kind of another bonus thing is I have a TENS unit. I love my TENS units. I put it on my lower back almost every night, keep my back muscles loose, and then also ice and heat, obviously. But while you're playing during the year, good hip turn, bank that right foot and flare this lead foot, and you'll feel more weight. And I actually feel like I hit the ball a little bit crisper because I've got some weight here. And then I think about just turning these hips like this and coming down, and that'll really, like, you barely even feel that on the trail leg, and that'll really, really help. So again, if you like these tips, if you like the videos I'm doing, I ask you please like and subscribe so I can continue to grow the channel and share these tips and everything. So I hope these tips really help, and I hope you can continue to play golf pain-free.